Hello, welcome to the MSU Turf Team Update. Today is July 14th, 2020. We have Dr. Jeff Andresen with us once again to provide weather outlook, what we've been experiencing and what we'll hopefully see in the next couple weeks here. So, Jeff, feel free to go ahead.
Thanks, Kevin, and happy Monday again. All right, did mine show up yet? I'm going to start with a little bit of color here, but it's a sign of the season. These are surface water temperatures in the Great Lakes, and I know most of us, and myself included, have not had the opportunity to go take advantage of our beautiful environment here, at least not yet. But if you have, you'll know that the lake temperatures, especially in Michigan, Huron, and Erie, are significantly above where they typically are this time of the year. Water temperatures currently, for example, in Lake Michigan are in the 70s, and even, well, you can see near Green Bay, actually at or above 80. And that's pretty unusual for this time of the year. And you ask, well, why? There's a lot of water out there to warm up. And of course, we've all had the opposite, I think, experience of going in the lakes when they're not so warm in the summer. That's not uncommon. But this year, it's strong solar radiation, which we've talked about here, and the lack of winds, especially over the last couple of weeks. This is a recent one just from yesterday, the 13th of July. But the winds act to stir up the lake and bring colder water that's down below up near the surface, and we just haven't had as much of that. So the result has been unusually warm surface temperatures. So we'll shout out to our lake shores. If you do get a chance to go, it's probably more inviting than it typically is this time of the year. I start off with it looks like I'm missing one of my graphics here for mean temperatures, but suffice to say, last week was much above normal with the heat wave. We had 8 consecutive days in several parts of Michigan here between the 2nd and the 9th of July where we had high temperatures at or above 90 degrees. That's very unusual, and it's more than we actually, in many places, it's more 90-degree days than we see in the entire season, and it's also earlier than normal. It's been several years since 2012, which was, of course, a big drought year that we've seen that string or that type of weather. Just as or even more importantly here, looking at precipitation during the past week, and this is a radar estimate which fills in some of the cracks, but with the weather system that went through late in the week, we finally did get some meaningful precipitation across lots of the state, including the southeastern corner, and you can see that here. Much of the state saw between 1 and 2 inches. We measured that. Exception up in the northern lower here, they were missed out a lot. Even heavier rains up here, though, you can see across central and western upper Michigan. But most significantly, I think we finally did get some much needed rainfall across the southern part of the state, and it was highly variable. That was one issue, and you can see that a little bit in the graphic here. But we heard a lot of reports about getting 1.5 inches in my particular location, and I didn't see any rain 5 miles away. There were a lot of that, but on that Friday evening, we did see the rain finally come through. We did get more uniform coverage, and it was much needed. Degree days with the warmer than normal week, not surprisingly, still several days to more than a calendar week ahead of where we typically are. That's not a surprise, and we'll given the forecast, will likely continue there as well. Moisture-wise, we're somewhat similar to where we were a week ago, maybe a little bit to the worse. We're still in the evaporative demand or drought and demand index here, the EDDI index, still in category 2, which puts us in the driest 10 percentile. That you can see much of lower Michigan is in that second category, and then you can see we're surrounded by a lot more of the dry areas. I think more significantly, the U.S. Drought Monitor upgraded much of at least southeastern lower Michigan here into the D0 abnormally dry category. We went from 5% the preceding week of the state area to 18%. So it's a significant increase, and you can see that that's reflected here in the map, and that there also are large areas of the Midwest, including especially just to our south, Indiana and Ohio, and also out in portions of Iowa and Minnesota, dryness has really intensified over the last several weeks, and likely, given the outlook, we're going to see more problems with this in the Midwest. Hopefully, though, Michigan might be just to the north and east of where the worst problems are. I threw this in here just as just to look backwards, but once in a while people ask, well, how accurate are these long lead outlooks that we always look at and we say, oh, it's warmer and drier than normal? How good are they? And this is an example, looking at a validation or verification of one. The official outlook here for the month of June we've just gone through is up here on the top with mean temperatures on the left and then precipitation totals on the right. And then down below, and this is courtesy of the state climatologist in Iowa, Dr. Justin Gleason. He's a good friend, and he put this together, but I think it is interesting. So these are the observed temperatures during and their departures from normal during the month of June, and then these are observed precipitation departures. And you can see a couple things here. One is that the NOAA Climate Prediction Center did really a pretty good job. If you look at temperature here, much of the central U.S., much above normal, and that correlates really, really well with what they forecast. They missed a little bit of the cooler than normal temperatures out in the Northwest, but in general, it's not too bad. They did well for us here in the Great Lakes region with the above normal forecast. Precip, you can see though, it's a little bit tougher. There's a lot of spatial variability here. Some areas of the Midwest you can see were significantly drier, and then not too far away, we've got areas of above or even much above normal. So not too bad, but you can also see one thing to learn here. In terms of forecasting these things, it's more difficult to forecast the precipitation totals than it is for the temperature. We expect the skill scores are higher for the temperature than they are for precip, and this is a really, really good reminder of that. Precip is just a really, really tough one. So when we do look at these outlooks, something to keep in mind as we see them, that they're not all built the same way. They also vary, the skill varies by the season and so forth. But it does give you a little bit of a hint for some a reminder for maybe some confidence once in a while that they do hit on occasion. Well, where are we going here? And the answer is summer is going to be back with a vengeance after a couple just gorgeous, beautiful days here and the mornings and overnights and so forth. We are going to go back to the dog days of summer when more 90-degree plus maximum temperatures here by the end of the week. This afternoon, though, the high pressure that's caused that or led to that really beautiful weather is sliding off to the east. And with it, we're going to see our winds shift more out of the southwest and going to bring a lot of the warm, it's actually hot, and humid air that's down all across portions of the south central and portions of the Corn Belt up into Michigan and the Great Lakes, and it's going to stay there for much of the rest of the week. The next weather feature to affect us with any chance of precipitation, actually that's already occurring, is this cold front. You can see just off to our west. It's already led to some showers and thunderstorms up in the western half of upper Michigan. But as you will see here in the forecast, it's not going anywhere fast. It will be the system. It's going to be the best chance for widespread rainfall we have probably during the next week here, but it's going to take its time to get here. Here's tomorrow morning. You can see it gets a little closer. Still a threat of showers and thunderstorms across the far northern part of the state, mostly the UP. And then we will gradually see spreading from northwest to southeast across the state during the day tomorrow, especially late tomorrow into tomorrow evening and early Thursday. That's when our best chances, at least for most of lower Michigan, will occur. Here's Thursday morning at 8 o'clock, and you can see the front actually, it washes out here, basically not moving, indicated as stationary. And one issue with this is we've looked at this over time, the last few days, and that is the timing on this has slowed down from what we had seen earlier in the forecast guidance. And that's important because for at least part of the state, this system will be moving through probably in the overnight, early morning hours when conditions are typically more stable. And the net result of this is there's less precipitation forecast, especially in southern areas, than there was a day or two ago. And I'll show you the forecast total here in just a second. But what was looking like a very, very widespread, uniform, fairly heavy or significant rainfall for much of the state is a little bit less so now than it was, again, just a day or two. So how much in the gauge here for the next upcoming week? And it depends. There's a huge variability or difference between the north and the south part of the state. And you could say, well, the haves keep getting more but we've basically got less than half of an inch forecast for the southern part of the state, increasing to at least an inch over the northern lower to as much as 2 inches or even more across upper Michigan. After this system goes through on Thursday, we should have, by the way, a dry day on most of the state on Friday, but then we will see probably almost the chance, at least for scattered showers and thunderstorms, almost on a daily basis, similar to what we saw last week during the middle of the week, and we saw them pop up in the afternoon and evening and then go away after the sun sets. We'll see that on Saturday, Sunday, and possibly Monday, along with very, very hot and humid conditions. There's also going to be a very noticeable increase in our dew point temperature, back up to 70 here by Friday. So it's going to be very, very uncomfortable during the day. Probably the type of weather National Weather Service probably have to issue heat advisories this weekend, with maximum temperatures expected to be from just less than 90 in the far north to the low and mid 90s across the south, along with the 70-degree dew points. And you're going to have heat index temperatures up near 100 or maybe even the low 100s for the weekend, continuing into Monday. So another visit of very, very hot and uncomfortable weather here. And there will be a continuing chance for precip, but our best one overall for area coverage will be here tomorrow night into Thursday morning. It varies by location. In terms of atmospheric demand and evapotranspiration rates, most of the state in that 1.3 to 1.5 inch weekly total. So again, somewhere on the order of about 1800s, 1700s to as much as 2200s, right around 0.2 of an inch per day typically. This is fairly high for the year, but again, not as extreme as what we saw a couple weeks ago, but still fairly high evaporative demand is in the cards, and especially because of those very, very warm temperatures. In the medium range forecast guidance, we continue to see the same signals and same theme here, and that is that the main jet stream flow here across North America is just a little bit further north than it typically is, and along with that jet stream, we're going to see the main storm track, which are our source of most of the precipitation, or at least the features associated with that. That also stays further north than it typically does at this time of the year. And so with that, with the jet stream further north, we're going to have very, very strong likelihood of continued warmer than normal mean temperatures. You can see that on the upper right, including virtually all of the region and all of Michigan. One change or one departure, though, from what we have seen in the last few weeks, and that is we're expected to see with this ridge, we'll see a number of weather disturbances moving through it. We're close enough to see at least the frontal boundaries, similar to what we see here experience over the state over the next 24 to 36 hours. We're going to see several of those frontal boundaries go through, and at least that should give us a relatively, an above normal chance for precipitation. It may not be uniformly heavy, but there will be quite a few chances. And because of that, the Climate Prediction Center, you can see, has indicated wetter than normal conditions, or forecast wetter than normal conditions for all of Michigan and much of the upper Midwest into the east. So that's one positive aspect of this. Both the 6 to 10 day and the 18 to 14 day outlooks are almost identical. Again, warmer and wetter than normal. In a little bit of contrast here for the 3 to 4 week outlook, which takes us into that first week of August. All of the lower 48, all of Michigan and the Great Lakes region are forecast to be warmer than normal. You can see that on the top here. Again, it's something we don't see that often, but we've seen a lot of it this summer. But in contrast to the medium range, what you just saw, the 6 to 10 and 8 to 14 day, it's also suggesting below normal precipitation. So this issue of water, we looked at the drought indices and so forth, it's becoming more and more likely that somewhere in the Midwest, in the central part of the U.S., there are going to be at least impactful problems. If there already are some, but more so here over the next several weeks. The hope is right now, though, that we are close enough to that storm track that we get enough precipitation that it's not us. It more than likely will be to our south and west somewhere. Hopefully but it does definitely bear watching given where we are. We're in the middle, the stable part of the summer season going into August. So sometimes these weather patterns have a way of setting up and it's hanging around. And this one keeps coming back. We've seen a couple minor shifts in it, but that definitely bears watching here for the next few weeks. So summarizing here, Again, summer, very, very summer-like, with showers and thunderstorms developing here over the next day, with heaviest rainfall coverage in totals probably in the north, decreasing as you go south. The other big theme in our forecast is significant increase in temperatures. We'll be up for the state today, for example, 5 degrees warmer than we were yesterday. Most areas will be in the mid-80s, and we'll do better than that tomorrow, and probably up to 90 by Friday, and then continuing the weekend with lots of humidity. Medium range forecast, the guidance suggests more of the same, with above normal precipitation again through the end of August, but possibly drier than normal once we get beyond that. But the warmer than normal is the one thing, very, very consistent signal that we see. And that's, again, this time of the year, it's something we want to keep an eye on. It just, it has a way of getting worse quickly. So with that, I'll wrap up and see if there might be any questions.
Thank you, Jeff. I know we had one question that had come in regarding whether last week's tropical storm that went through the East Coast had any effect on any of our weather patterns here.
Yeah, and that's an interesting question, and most of it, if you look at it, it's an easy one, and the answer is probably not. Very unlikely for that to happen. But once in a while we do see an impact, and I'll get to that in just a second. But in this particular case, we had the landfall of Tropical Storm Faye, and it was the 6th named storm in the northwestern Atlantic basin so far this year. That is that's a record for having that many named storms this early. We're just in the early part of the hurricane season in the Atlantic right now, but it's been very, very active. Remember, we also had, actually Michigan and the region had a visit from the remnants of a tropical system in Cristobal here back a couple weeks ago. That one had a very, very unusual path northwest of where we typically see it. So if those storms are going to influence our weather, that is typically the key. Where does it make landfall, and then where does a jet stream take it? Cristobal, it allowed that storm to go due actually almost northwest, up into the middle of the Corn Belt, and then through the Upper Peninsula, which is very, very, very rare. Last Friday, when it made landfall, it almost went straight. It went up. It made landfall in New Jersey, and then went up the Hudson Valley, and then recurved off to. Typically, they recurve off to the east as they enter the west latitudes, and then off into the Atlantic. And they don't have any influence on us at all. That's the most common outcome with most of these storms, so the vast majority of them. But once in a while, we see a large storm that will move from the tropics up into the mid-latitudes, and it actually is large enough, it has large enough circulation, it will influence the actual configuration of the jet stream. And we've seen that over the last few years out in the Eastern Pacific, and this is something that happens in in the fall, typically, and we'll see a large late season typhoon. In this case, it's the same. It's a tropical cyclone. It's the same thing. It's just a different name, that part of the world. But we'll see one hit Eastern Asia, the Korean Peninsula, maybe Japan, and then move up into the mid-latitudes, and it actually alters then the wave train. Remember that this jet stream goes all the way around the hemisphere. And so back to that question, that is a way, certainly, it influences ultimately our weather and climate. It may take a few days downstream or later on, but it actually influences then the way that the jet stream behaves. So that's another way that it can happen. But the easiest and the most obvious is, where does the thing make landfall? And does the stern current allow it to get up here? And the answer is usually very, very unlikely for that to happen. But sometimes, like we saw with Cristobal, it does happen.
Thanks, Jeff. I know this brief reprieve from the heat has been nice, but sounds like we're getting it again this weekend. Sounds like maybe we're going to start breaking records the way it looks.
Yes, 2012 was if you remember, that one was a very, very demanding one, and certainly from a water standpoint, it was probably the highest potential ET and water use that we've had in 30 years. It was actually the most significant drought in Michigan since 1988, and that's we've been fortunate. Our climate is getting wetter on average, and we tend to see fewer droughts and less severe droughts with time. That's a good thing for us. But once in a while, we will see a year like 2012, and that's one we keep looking at. That's the last time we had this many, though, 90-degree plus days. It's just right now that I think the key is getting some of that water for the landscape to be able to deal with those high temperatures.
Yeah, I think that rainfall we had, at least in mid-Michigan, it kind of paused things for a while,
Yeah.
gave us a little relief. We'll need more to resume growth if it's not irrigated, though, that's for sure.
Right.
But anyway, thank you very much, Jeff, and we look forward to
My
hearing
pleasure.
from you next week.